talking through how you can score high on a extended essay in computer science. I should start off by saying this is mainly based off of the old marking criteria, and I will do another video once we know a little bit more about how the new one will work, and maybe after the first cycle of extended essays, so maybe in a year's time when we know a little bit more about things. So within the old one, but I assume a good extended essay on the old marking criteria will still do well on the new one. There are these 7 aspects that you need to try and include to get the mark. So you've got your introduction, background information, methodology, findings and results, discussion, conclusion, and reflection. The first 6 should give you a pretty good indication of how to set out your essay, and they should kind of be your main parts of the essay anyway. The first one is your introduction, which I would advise to write after you have done your extended essay. There are 3 main things that you need to include in your introduction. So, what the essay is about, how you are going to assess your research question, e.g., outline your methodology, and why. So why does your research matter? Some justification or context for the research. It's good to see essays that justify the topic and the research question with technical terminology defined. So state that the experiment will be conducted, or the essay was a literature review, and perhaps outline some structure of the essay. Okay. Then we've got your background information. So you want to see a good range of resources here. So you're wanting around at least 15 different sources. You want to try and avoid blogs and online sources because they're kind of not verified. If you have no other choice, you can include some, but most of them need to be from academic or reliable sources. Okay. So you should use a range of sources. Technical terminology, it should be defined and cited all the time, and you want a good understanding of computer science aspect of your topic. You've kind of got to remember that this part gives the information to the reader in order to understand the next bit. So you need to explain this clearly so that anyone would be then able to understand your experiment. Then we've got the methodology. So you need to outline your experiment and explain your choices. So it should have enough information to allow someone to replicate your research. Okay, so you might need algorithms, your source data set, computer specification. You need to justify decisions. So why during pre-processing did you remove certain features, for example? So if you are not doing an experiment, you should explain your choice of sources instead. Your methodology should be really clear. So why did you choose that computer? Okay. Why did you choose that data set? Why did you choose this piece of code? As long as you explain your choice, then it's fine. If you don't explain it, then you're going to kind of lose marks on this section. Okay. Then you'll have your findings and results. So you'll run your experiment and you'll show some findings and results. This needs to be more than just tables and graphs. You need to give a summary. Okay, you don't want to go into too much detail here, but you can't just have the table and results. You also don't want to have too many tables and results in this section because then it makes it difficult to read. Okay, you just want to focus on the stuff that's kind of going to help the reader understand what you found, and then give a short summary underneath each of your graphs. Okay, because you lead on to your discussion. So this is what kind of separates the people from the middle marks to the top marks. Okay, so you give some insight into your findings. That's why in the previous section you don't go into too much detail, because you're going to do it here. Okay, and try and link it to literature. Okay, so explain what your results mean and how it relates to your question and how it's trying to answer your question and whether it does answer your question or not. You can also add in a subsection here talking about limitations of the experiment, kind of like, let's say if you're doing something like neural networks, you're a student doing IB. you've probably only got a laptop. That might be a limitation, because obviously in the real world they'll have a lot more powerful computers. So talk about how that might have affected your findings, how quickly it made your experiment run, etc. Blah blah blah. Okay. And then your conclusion, you need to include your research question again. You should wrap up the research question and not the experiment. I've realised I've made a spelling error there, but we'll leave that. Okay. So it should be linked to your question again and mentioned. So some insight into what this research means. And in your introduction, you say why. You should also explain why this is sort of important for the world. Okay, so your research questions should kind of link to the world and how it impacts the world, and that kind of makes for a better extended essay. And then finally, your reflection. You don't just want to do a timeline of events, e.g. I did this and then I did that and then I did this and then I did that. You need to show some kind of engagement with the extended essay. So what did you learn? What challenges did you face? How did you overcome them? And try and be evaluative and analytical in the extended essay reflection. So that's about it. If you've got any questions, you can add them in the comments. I'll try and reply to as many as you can. But it should give you a good idea of how to set out your extended essay and what kind of things you need to include and what not to include in order to focus yourself and get yourself the highest marks possible.